Beer may seem simple, but every glass is the result of a precise dance between just four ingredients: malt, hops, water, and yeast. Each one has a unique job in the brewing process, shaping the color, the flavor, the aroma, and even the alcohol in your glass. Malt is produced in a malting facility, not in the brewery itself. Barley is steeped, germinated, and kilned to unlock enzymes and develop fermentable sugars. When brewers receive the finished malt, it's ready to use. When it comes to beer, malt is the foundation. But how does a simple barley grain become the heart of brewing? It all begins with steeping. Barley is soaked in water, reawakening the grain and preparing it to sprout. Next comes germination. As the grain begins to grow, natural enzymes activate, converting stored starches into simple sugars, perfect food for brewing yeast. Finally, germination is halted in the kiln. The temperature and time spent here shape the malt's final character. Light kilning gives us pale malts with sweet, bready notes. Darker kilning develops flavors of caramel, toast, chocolate, or even coffee. During brewing, malt is mashed with hot water, releasing its sugars into a sweet liquid called wort. Yeast then takes over. It consumes these sugars, producing alcohol, carbonation, and complex flavor compounds. This is the magical transformation from wort into beer. Malt doesn't just feed the yeast, it also defines the beer's body, flavor, and color. Pale malts make light, crisp beers, while roasted malts give us deep brown stouts with rich roasted flavors. The Maillard reaction, the same process that browns bread, is what brings out these darker colors and tastes. While barley is the most common, brewers also use other grains to expand the flavor palette. Wheat malt adds a smooth, hazy character. Rye brings spice and earthiness. Oats create a silky body, perfect for stouts and hazy IPAs. And corn or rice can lighten flavor and make beers crisp and refreshing. In the end, malt is the soul of beer. It creates the fermentable base, shapes the color, builds the body, and adds the flavors that make every style unique. Hops are green, cone-shaped flowers, and they're one of the four essential ingredients in beer. Inside each cone is a golden powder called lupulin. This is where the magic happens. The resins and essential oils that give beer bitterness, flavor, and aroma. When hops are added early in the boil, they create bitterness that balances the sweetness of the malt. Added later, or at the whirlpool, they release more delicate flavors and aromas. And when added cold, after fermentation, a process called dry hopping delivers bold, fresh aromas without adding extra bitterness. Just like wine grapes, hops take on different qualities depending on where they're grown. American hops are famous for their bold citrus, pine, and tropical fruit notes. European hops, especially the traditional noble varieties, tend to be earthy, floral, and spicy. And hops from the southern hemisphere, like those from New Zealand and Australia, can burst with flavors of passion fruit, white wine, or ripe tropical fruit. Most hops you'll see in brewing aren't fresh cones. They're pelletized, dried, milled, and pressed into small pellets. Pelletizing helps preserve freshness, makes hops easier to store and ship, and improves extraction in the brewhouse. It's what allows brewers to use hops consistently, all year long. So the next time you enjoy a beer from a crisp Pilsner to a hop-forward IPA, remember the hops. They're not just an ingredient, they're the spice of beer. Beer is over 90% water, and the minerals dissolved in that water quietly shape the final beer. Soft water is perfect for brewing crisp, delicate lagers. In contrast, hard water that's loaded with sulfates will sharpen the bitterness in hoppy ales. Water also drives the chemistry of brewing. It activates enzymes in the mash, helps pull bitterness from hops in the boil, and even affects how yeast ferments. It might be the least glamorous ingredient, but water is the stage on which the rest of the beer is built. Yeast is the living engine of brewing. It is the ingredient that actually turns water, malt, and hops into beer. Without yeast, you just have sweet grain tea. With yeast, you get alcohol, carbonation, and a symphony of flavor. The brewer's job is to make a sweet liquid called wort using water, malt, and hops. The yeast's job is to turn the wort into beer. When yeast is added to cooled wort, it consumes the sugars from malt and transforms them into alcohol and carbon dioxide. But along the way, it leaves its own fingerprint on the beer. When it comes to beer, yeast is more than just a fermentation workhorse. It's one of the biggest factors shaping a beer's flavor, aroma, body, and mouthfeel. Let's break down the main types of yeast and even some bacteria that brewers use. First, lager yeast. Known scientifically as Saccharomyces pastorianus, it ferments at cooler temperatures and settles at the bottom of the tank. Lager yeast is clean and precise, producing little to no fruity or spicy notes. That's why lagers taste crisp, refreshing, and let the malt and hops take center stage. Think Pilsners, Helles, or Dunkels. Then there's ale yeast, or Saccharomyces cerevisiae. This is a top fermenting yeast that thrives at warmer temperatures. Ale yeast can give beer character. During fermentation, fruity esters and spicy phenols are produced. Depending on the type of ale yeast, these flavors can vary from barely noticeable to pronounced. Flavors like banana, apple, pear, clove, and pepper are common with Belgian ale yeast strains. Ale yeast creates a fuller body and rounder mouthfeel. From IPAs to stouts to Belgian ales, ale yeast makes each style expressive and distinct. Things get even more interesting with wild yeast, like Brettanomyces. This yeast can come from the air, fruit skins, or wooden barrels, and it creates bold, funky flavors. Barnyard, leather, hay, or even tropical fruit. Wild yeast also tends to dry out beer, giving it a sparkling, wine-like body. You'll find it in lambics, goes, and American wild ales. And finally, some brewers invite bacteria to the party, most often lactobacillus or pediococcus. These microbes don't produce alcohol, but they do make lactic acid, adding tart and sour flavors. The result? Beers that are sharp, refreshing, and mouth-puckering, like Berliner Weiss, Gose, and Flanders Red. So, what's the difference? Lager yeast makes beer clean and crisp. Ale yeast makes it bold and expressive. Wild yeast adds funk and complexity. And bacteria bring in tart and sour notes. Yeast doesn't just make beer, it defines it. The same wort, fermented with two different yeasts, can turn into two entirely different beers. Yeast is the brewer's signature, and it's what brings the beer to life. Malt, hops, water, and yeast. 4 simple ingredients that, through brewing, transform into something greater than the sum of their parts. Malt builds sweetness and color, hops add balance and aroma, water sets the stage, and yeast makes it all come alive.